Good afternoon, LEC community. Thank you so much for joining us on another Thursday and another edition of Ask an Educator. My name is Susana Elisa Raraz, and I'm the Vice President of Educator Supports of the Latinx Education Collaborative. Our mission is to increase Latino representation in schools, and we are very honored to have with us for you this afternoon the wonderful Dr. Jim Granada with us to give us an amazing story and glimpse into the story of an amazing Latinx educator. So, Dr. Granada, how are you?
Doing okay. It's a whirlwind, but it's been a whirlwind for several months now.
Yeah.
And this is therapeutic in many ways because I can step away for an hour from all of the craziness that is going on in my work.
Well, I'm glad that therapeutic is the word for for our interview today. I'm looking forward to it as well. Ask an Educator for me is always a good opportunity to step away as well. You know, my teammates know that I'm here and my family knows that I'm here. And so to talk to educators and hear the stories of kind of where we've all come from and how we've all ended up in a very similar realm and areas of the country, right? So I am excited to jump in. So without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
All right. Well, I'm Jim Granada. My full name is Arthur James. And sometimes people get a little confused because of my generation, why I don't have a more Hispanic name. And even the last name Granada, if you focus in on some of the roots of it, it's probably more Spanish than it is from Mexico. But that's what I was given. My dad's name was Arthur. He had no middle name. So I got the middle name, and I think it was my mom who told me that they started calling me Jimmy very early on because she did not want me called Little Art. So
I can understand that.
So this is I've been in education since 1977. And that's when I graduated, so people can start doing the math. But I went right into, I knew I wanted to be a teacher in high school. And that's the path that I took. I'll back up a little bit. I was born in Wichita, Kansas. We could start very early on. My mom was born in Madison, Kansas. My dad was born in Wichita, Kansas, and beyond that, Mexico. So we've been here for a while, and my dad ended up in Chicago for a big city, graduated from high school. My mom stayed in Madison and then dropped out. And her reasoning for dropping out was that she was very popular and hung out with kids with money. And she was from a family of like 15 without money. And she told me one day she dropped out because she couldn't be like her friends, which was, very sad for me because I recognized so much talent and intelligence that she had. And she worked her way through and accomplished a lot for not having a high school degree. My dad used his high school degree to a degree, but neither one of them ever even thought about college. So they met. I keep finding out more information about my parents from relatives and my sister who knows more than I do about them. And sometimes it's like, what?
Yeah.
But they met. My mom once said that she married my dad just because he wouldn't leave her alone. And it was much more than that. But they both had a really good sense of humor. Yeah. My mom's sense of humor was a little more wicked, and I probably inherited that. But they met. I was their first anniversary present the day before their first anniversary. And I was the first of three who were born. So I was the oldest. They were, of course, when I was little, I didn't know all of this. But when I was growing up and all, I never felt like we were poor. But when my sister and my brother and I, we talk about our family, we probably would have been considered in today's standards poor. The thing is that my mom's family, and to a degree my dad's family, they all helped each other all the time. And so I think that's one of the previous, and I don't know to what degree it is now, but I know historically the whole extended family pulling together and helping each other, that was significant in my life. But it was also the fact that we always had enough that we didn't know that, you know, that we were more on the low end of income. And back then there were things like free lunch and all, but we never did any of that. I think that was a sense of pride that my mom and dad had. My dad talked about taking to work, and this was before he met my mom, but he would take to work tortillas with beans and sometimes lard sandwiches. And that was like, really?
Wow. Yeah.
They did what they did to survive. My mom would talk about the clothes that she got hand-me-down, and my grandmother was good at sewing, and my mom had shared that she used to sew out of the sacks, the big sacks that things came in. She used to make things out of that for them to wear. So there was a sense of pride that I think helped overshadow the fact that we were a needy family in terms of, and even more so when my dad would ended up with the aircraft industry as a shipping clerk, but sometimes he would, there were times he'd get laid off, and then it would always hit hard. But we always had a wide variety of things to eat. We always had hamburgers on Friday and all. So they did a real good job of making sure that we didn't feel poor, even though I think we were. And that's trickled, it's still carried over to my mom and dad's final years, particularly my mom, who would, constantly tell us, do not get credit, do not do this, do not do that, because they had to dig themselves out of debt. And they did, and she was quite proud of that. And the fact that she had money in the bank, when my dad died, she had money in the bank from her income, and that she didn't have any credit debt at all.
Yeah.
So that was a real success on her part. I went to school. I was born in Wichita. I went to school at an elementary school here. One of, I think, 2 Hispanic families in the school.
Oh, wow.
My mom and dad, and I'll have to say it's probably my mom, decided where we were going to live, and we did not live where our relatives were at. On one side of town, we were in the other, and we were not in the Hispanic side of town. So went to school. All 3 of us went to that elementary school. I was the only one to go to junior high, that's what it was then, as a 7th grader. And then we moved to Salina, Kansas. And then it was even more the isolation, because I ended up in a school as an 8th grader again, it was a junior high, but I ended up in a school that was on the other side of town from where all of the Mexican neighborhoods were at. So again, I was a fish out of water, and then the same was in high school. So a lot of acculturation, but also getting to a point where I wanted to reconnect with my culture. Because when we were in Wichita, we had family. We didn't do quinceañeras, but we did baptisms. We went to Mexican dances. We had a lot of things that were more traditional. And then when we moved to Salina, all the family was in Wichita. So we didn't get as much of that. And during high school is when I found my roots again. And I became a very strong Chicano advocate, because that's what it was at the time. I learned all about Cesar Chavez and the movement, and got involved in organizations that connected me. I connected with people through the organizations from the other high school, since once again, there were maybe 3 Hispanic families in the school of 1,500 that I was in. So I got the chance to connect that way. And I was very appreciative of the fact that I did that. I continued that also in some of the courses because I wasn't raised bilingually. My dad never really talked about his upbringing. My mom was told in her little Kansas town that there was nothing to support her, so they had to learn English. And she was toward the end of that family, one of the younger ones, and she saw how hard it was for everybody else, and she didn't want us to experience the same thing. Interestingly enough, she got mad at a fifth grade teacher that I had because the fifth grade teacher kind of scolded her for not raising me bilingually. That was an older white teacher who was ahead of her time. And I ended up with her as a fifth grade teacher and a sixth grade teacher, and people were afraid of her, but I learned a lot with that lady. She was wonderful. So in high school, I started to stretch my wings some. And as a freshman, I thought, I know a lot of people, kind of. So I'm going to run for class president.
Oh, yeah.
So I did. I did not win, but that didn't dampen my hopes because it connected me with some other people and all. So I ran again as a sophomore, and it was a class of about 300, and I won.
Nice.
That same year, I got an appointment to our student council as the treasurer. And then the following year, I ran for one of the bigger roles in that organization, and I won that, and I kind of became pretty well recognized on the campus. I will say this, unfortunately, it went to my head to the degree that I started apparently to appear power hungry, a little elitist and all, to the people that I most connected with. And so when I decided, I'm going to run again, I didn't get anywhere because they thought, no, we're done with you. You turned like you didn't stay the same once you got that power. It was a very humbling lesson when that happened. But I could take from my 2 years of experience, actually 3 years of experience, leading to that senior year, I grew from all of that. And when I got to college, I became very involved with a lot of different organizations and all, and took a lot of courses because I wanted to be challenged. And I don't know if I hold the record yet, or if I hold a record for the most courses taken during a semester. I have a report card that I have 13 courses, not credits, courses that I took one semester. And I also had a semester where I had 27 credits. Now, the 27 credits, however, I have to fess up, I think 10 of those credits may have been that I tested out of those classes. So I finished in 3 years. So I was a smart little Mexican that was out there in the field. And I had people that were trying to mentor me along the way, trying to mentor me to not go into teaching because they thought I could do so much more. I had 1 week moment with the guidance counselor who wasn't all that helpful in high school, at least not to me, because I didn't know about a lot of opportunities unless I found them out. But I did look into the military academies, and that was a very weak moment on my part. I really didn't know what that was all about, being first generation to go to college. And I was lucky enough while in student council to end up at Emporia State University, where that event was held. It was a teacher's college. I fell in love with that college, so that's where I went.
Do you think the the fall of Jim from freshman to senior year in student council and all of that, did that kind of blend in with your interest to become an educator? Because you said that interest kind of began in high school. So was there some correlation in that process?
No, it was, I had probably multiple personalities if people would ask about it, because, I could hang with pretty much anyone and kind of morph into whatever their thing was. But the teaching was in there from the very beginning. And I don't know why. I had some teachers that were really good, but my favorite teacher was a fourth grade elementary teacher, and I just knew she was fun and I liked her. It was not one of those significant things. Maybe collectively with all of because I do remember a lot of good teachers, and I would measure the good either by the way they taught, that kept me interested, the challenge they allowed for me to do, like a really old third grade teacher I had who let me kind of do my own math along the way. And then I would do everything wrong and she would have to correct me because she wasn't guiding me quite enough. But so those kind of things maybe collectively led me to that. I didn't have anybody, because I've worked in teacher education now, especially with an alternative program that I run here, on top of being chair and program chair for multiple things.
Wait. I need our listeners to start to keep track of credit hours and courses taken and also titles held, because you also have a record number of titles held at Wichita State University. I need someone who's listening, start taking notes so that, we can make sure to give you a plaque for all of these.
Well, since I jumped off in that direction, and you can tell I can talk forever about all kinds of things, but I sometimes will get off the path.
No, we're totally on path, but
okay.
yes.
Relative to what I'm doing now, well, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, back up.
When we were, what led me to become a teacher may have been collective in terms of the positive experiences I had all along the way. But with my alternative people, sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, they had an influential teacher, or they had a teacher in the family. And because I have career changers, once in a while, I'll have somebody that says, I had a terrible education and I want to do better for kids. Sometimes they don't become the better teachers. They become just like the teachers they had. And I'm thinking, I'm a little let down because you are becoming what you said you didn't want to become.
Yeah.
But I had a little bit of a chance, because we weren't that progressive in our school or in Salina to have a lot of experiences, but I did get a chance to do some tutoring at an elementary school. And I think that I knew I was interested, but having that wonderful time with those third graders, I think it was third graders, really was pretty influential at that point because I enjoyed it so much. And I was able to take all of them to a South High School basketball game.
Hey, that's so cool.
We were the whole row, all these little people and me. Aww. And so that was fun. And that probably clinched it for me. So.
Were you in high school then?
Yeah, that was in high school. When I started with my teacher education track and degree, it was elementary. I also added on early childhood. That was part of all of that courses and all that I took. I tried a little bit of time in a Head Start and decided, a little bit too young.
Yeah.
And I did want to become a bilingual kindergarten teacher. I eventually got to do that, which, people were, it caught them off guard. One, there was a male teacher to begin with in an elementary school. Second, they were teaching kindergarten. And third, it was Hispanic. It was like the trifecta that was happening. And I remember teaching across the hallway when I got my kindergarten classroom. I was a bilingual designated teacher, and this other teacher who is the sweetest person, she was an older white teacher that was the traditional classroom. And I know I had parents confused when they had their kids coming in, if they were in my class and they weren't bilingual, because if I happened to be over, I kind of dressed casually. If I happened to be over by the window and all, I'm thinking some of these parents thought maybe I was a custodian until they talked to me. And then they realized, oh no, this is not a custodian, because I had a lot of good communication skills developed over time. So I started out running a migrant program my first year out. That was a little bit interesting in terms, not so much about the program itself, but about funding and how they were doing the funding and all. And I had a lot of question marks that kept popping up.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I don't know how long this position is even going to last. So I ended up in Western Kansas, where I was lured to a small community because they had a desperate need for bilingual teachers. And when I got my second grade class, I had one student that needed bilingual support. So that was a little bait and switch.
Yeah.
Stayed there for a year because it was too tiny. When it ended up in Garden City, had about 27,000. Taught again elementary, ended up in a fifth grade, not in a bilingual classroom. My final year there, then I started my work on my master's degree when I moved to Wichita. I was in the Wichita system in a lot of different buildings because I don't stay put very often. A lot of different buildings, all adding to my resume and collectively completing my marketability set of what I could do, because I was always opening doors and trying new things out. So during my time in Wichita, I taught middle school, I taught science, I was taught in a magnet, I was a gifted resource teacher. I taught first grade, I taught, up to seventh grade, I was a team leader. So I was still honing some of those leadership skills, even in the work setting. And then I decided it's time for me to go to higher ed. And I got a taste of that when I started working on my doctorate. And the most influential person for that was a Hispanic, now dearly departed, became a very good friend. And he was at Northern Arizona University. And I had a chance to meet him at a professional development here in Wichita when I was teaching. And he was the leader in the field for minority gifted at the time, one of. But his specialty was looking at minority or Hispanic gifted kids. And I got a chance to sit with him at lunch, and it was like sitting with my uncle. He was just so endearing. And I thought that was why I decided to go to that university. I lucked out. I've lucked out many times because that's probably not the best way to decide to go to university, because we didn't even talk about it. And so I knew they had a doctoral program, curriculum instruction. I was all set to have classes with him. Then when I got there, I found out, well, I'm not ever going to have classes with him because he's the director of research. But yet again, I lucked out because I ended up with an advisor who was the main instructor for all the work that I was doing in gifted education and curriculum instruction, program evaluation. That, again, another dearly departed, but phenomenal for me to be able to get that doctorate. He didn't kick me in the butt all the time, like many dissertation chairs will and advisors. He felt I was self-correcting, and he would check in with me, say, how's it going? Need any help? Okay, let me know. That kind of thing. Which was fine, because whenever I asked him for help, he would tell me, like an author, I'd say, I need some articles for somebody, and he'd give me an author's name, always somebody he had worked with. And then when I'd ask him, well, what chapters or what? Oh, you have to read the whole book or all of the books. So I quit asking him. But he knew that when I would finish, that I would have great pride in that dissertation and that I would own it. And I did.
You made you work for it. So you.
I did. And it was 2 volumes because I had a hard time stopping. I kept wanting to say, oh, I need to read this article now. What about this and all? And of course, he let me self-correct to the point that I had 2 volumes of my dissertation.
Wow.
Possibly another record. Probably not.
Well, yeah, and we're not done yet. I mean, it's not, we don't know.
So I get my taste of higher ed. This was another thing. I've been very lucky, because while I was there with not the person I went there for, but with this advisor who was not Hispanic, he was white, but really cool guy, really smart guy, and really cared about his students. he'd have parties. This is his house for all of us and all. It was wonderful. And I had a really wonderful group of friends while I was there. But he also gave me the chance in a grant that they were doing to teach classes. So I got my taste. I had a little bit of dabbling before, but I got my real taste of teaching in higher ed while I was getting my doctorate. And then that sealed the deal.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be leaving K-12 because I really enjoyed working with adults. So
that's a unique love. You know, not everyone can do that. I'm going to pause you, Dr. Granada. I'm going to bring Delia into our conversation. So, you know, we're streaming live to Facebook. Delia's watching. Hi, Delia, good friend of the organization. She actually did a PD for us this week, which turned out great. She says, hello, Dr. Granada. Thank you for sharing your story. And she has a question that I think we all are wondering, and that is, how many lives have you actually had?
Okay, I'm going to put it in a different way. I have what I would consider, and people are always, you know, we're always exposed in education to all these different learning style things and all these measures, true colors, Gregoric, all of these things.
Yeah.
All the time I end up eclectic, which means I'm a little bit of everything. So I had a conversation when I was the director of advanced academic services in the Austin School District. So I jumped over my first stint in higher ed at a very elite private university, and then at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and then I got to work in gifted. So there's a whole lot of stuff that has happened. So it's like multiple journeys, all leading eventually in the same direction. But I consider myself, and this probably applies to my careers, all under the educational umbrella, but all very different, in that I'm very situational in terms of my personality and how I function. So if I need to be ultra organized for something, even though I don't like it, I can do it. But it's situational. So
kind of like in high school when you were, you know, running for student council and all of those things. It was like, I'm over here now. I'm at this lunch table now. I'm at this lunch table now.
Yes. And so I've done some community theater that people do not know about. And I was a different kind of personality when I was doing that.
Cool.
And it was not multiple personalities because I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But it was very situational and I could go with the flow. Now, people that have gotten to know me, when I tell them, you know, in real life, I'm an introvert. I do not come across like that. But I like my me time. I like to be alone. Right now, virtual, I'm in a room by myself. I'm quite comfortable. And I don't like a lot of big social things. That's not what I prefer to do. But if I get stuck, like at conferences and all, if I get stuck, or if I'm in it with a table of strangers, then all of a sudden I become chatty Cathy. And so I can do it. I can do it, but it's not my preference.
Yes.
But I think some of that comes from the fact, as I connect all my story together, some of it comes from the fact that all the people that I knew first of all, I went to, from being in Wichita, I went to a school where I knew no one.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust. I knew no one. My family knew no one. Well, no, we knew a couple of people, but they were at the other school. So then when I went to Emporia State, I was the only one, I think, from my class that went to Emporia State. Started all over again. Had to meet new people and all. Not easy to do for an introvert, but I managed to do that.
Well, then you went to Arizona.
Then I came to Wichita, which was like, okay, there's an anchor a little bit to work on my. Then from Emporia, I went to Ulysses, Kansas, knew not a soul. Garden City, knew not a soul. Wichita, at least I had some family connections. And stayed in Wichita in the public schools for 10 or 11 years. And then it was like, okay, time to put myself out there again where I don't know anybody. So I went to Willamette University. That's who hired me. They saw the value of everything I had done.
Yeah.
So I got hired while I was still working on my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
They hired me.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it, but to be not crass, but the reality check was there was not enough Mexicanness in being there, and it was very white, and that's said more of like a social state rather than discriminatory and all. But they did have a sign not that long prior to me getting there that announced how many white people were in the town. And it was the head of the skinheads. I mean, the headquarters of the skinheads. So yeah, it had some of that stuff going on. But that wasn't why I left. I wanted to be back again since I had left my people. I wanted to be back again with my people, and ended up at University of Texas, San Antonio.
Yeah.
Loved it there. Rich in terms of culture.
Yeah.
Not like Austin, where I ended up. That's a different kind of culture, like New York culture type of thing. But I got steeped in the culture of San Antonio, and I loved it there. It was a wonderful time, and I had started my second year in my position there, just at the time that I was ready to defend, and a position came open at a educational service center for a gifted education specialist, which from when I was in Emporia and on out, had always been what I wanted to do. They needed me. I wanted to do that. So I ended up in San Antonio still, but at an education service center.
Well, you went with the flow until the stars aligned, right? I mean, eventually you got what felt like the perfect position for you, right? We got some love happening in the comments. I want to make sure you catch it. Hi, Dr. Clark. Thanks for being with us. Dr. Clark says, what a great story. You mentioned your advisor earlier. Dr. Clark it resonates with him. Was lucky to have a great advisor at Baker University. Hey, sometimes it's that one person or one interaction, right, that can kind of reel you in or kind of shift your trajectory a little bit and just get you in the right place. Dr. Socorro Herrera, do you all know each other, I'm assuming? Really? Okay. Well, you all need to meet each other. Hi, Dr. Herrera. Thanks for being with us. She says hola, and Delia says hola to Dr. Herrera. Un brazo fuerte. And Delia says, yeah, you go with the flow. And then San Antonio happened, where it was the perfect position, that perfect opening.
Well, and I was in that position supporting 52 school districts as their gifted education go-to. That was a lot of time in my car, trying to keep track of things, never knowing if my one time at one place made that much of a difference, because it wasn't where I would go back. They'd have me come in for like one time thing. And so it was really frazzling. So
well, the fact that you referred to how much time you spent in the car to that experience should tell you kind of
when I was driving, especially when I would go from San Antonio to Eagle Pass, a lot of country out there to get to Eagle Pass. The most wonderful person I got to work with there. So I loved going there, but I didn't like driving there. And I'd have to, as I was driving across all of this big region, I'd have to remind myself, where am I going? Who am I seeing? Because there were 52 districts that I worked with. So once again, luck knocked on my door, and I found out about a gift position for gifted in a school district to run the gifted program. And that was in Round Rock, Texas. So I applied for that position, and from the behind the scenes information that I had, since I had my network out there, I found out that they basically had their person, but because of this, they had to pay attention to me.
Interesting.
But I did find out, because the people that they would contact for my references would tell me, kind of giving me the signal, I don't know about this, because what I found out is that they were calling because they wanted this person to come in to they had their chosen one. Mm-hmm. And they were asking them questions about my faults. That was their focus, trying to find where the cracks were at. And all. So I didn't get the job. They didn't even notify me. I found out at the state gifted conference that somebody else had gotten the job.
Wait, you didn't get it?
There's irony. No, I did not get it, but there's irony in this story. So then I find out there's an opening in Austin. Big district compared to Round Rock, because Round Rock's a suburb of Austin. Mm. So I go there and I get great indications early on, particularly from the deputy superintendent, that I have the job in pocket, because she was talking about things like, we need you. The irony of all of this is that, so I get hired, I stun with my salary in this big district. I stun my supervisor at the Education Service Center as to the amount I'm getting paid. And it continued to increase. Mm-hmm. But the irony of all of that is that I went in and there was a huge mess that I had to clean up. Took 2 years to clean it up. The person that made the mess was the one the other district hired. The irony continues, because I hired, and I was there in that role for 11 years, the longest I've ever been in the same job, doing the same thing. But I had hired people along the way, and I hired a real go-getter who eventually, early on, because she was good and I trained her well, she applied for a position because he didn't last very long. She applied for that position. She got that position, and she came back and said he left the same kind of mess there that he did in Austin.
Oh my gosh.
So,
11 years. So you spent 11 years in that position. You said the first 2 were kind of cleaning it up. What kept you there the other 9?
Well, believe me, I get the 4-year itch and the 7-year itch all the time. So there were times when,
is that what that is?
There were times when I had offers or I interviewed places during that 11 years. And then finally I decided, it's time for me to go and come back to higher ed. So initially I got to rebuild everything. After I fixed everything, then I got to build, and I got to do a lot of innovative things. And when I was at the service center, I got to do the same kinds of things, but I didn't have to fix anything. It was solid when I got there. So I got to improve, not fix. And I love that. And I put some things in place that were very innovative for that service center. When I got to Austin, 2 years to fix. After I got that, got all my staff on board and all, we finally got to move forward on doing some good things there. There's a few things that are still my legacy there, but over time, I got a little tired of things, especially when I got to a point where the expectation was maintenance or doing work to help the higher ups. That wasn't what I thought I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
Had a great little superintendent, used to tout. He hired the first Hispanic director for his district. He was a funny little, elfish man, but we really enjoyed him. He left, and the person that came in, I remember our bilingual director, who I was a good friend with when I was there until she left, called her, it was Tyrannosaurus something, because this person was mean. This person wanted to do things her way. This person flat out told us in central office that only she could talk to the board. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of flight. A lot of people left.
Yeah.
I stayed there think 2 years, and then it's like, yeah, no, it's time.
Yeah.
And they were going through a reorganization as well. So I thought, it's time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to higher ed. So I had dabbled a little bit. I applied a little bit. I even had an offer at Cal State Sacramento for a position. I told them I couldn't come out because of all these circumstances. They said they would hold the position for me.
Oh, wow.
And then the governor took office and started cutting higher ed right and left. They kept telling me, oh no, your position is protected. But my position was supposed to be to grow a bilingual gifted program there. They were starting me out with one seminar course. And I thought, okay, well, that'll give me a start and then I can build the rest. But then I kept asking, well, what's happening with, with all these cuts? Oh, that won't hurt us because we have a cushion of adjuncts. And I thought, I'd hate to be an adjunct in that school if they were viewed as cushions. That's where we'll let go. My logic was, who's going to teach those courses those adjuncts are teaching in bilingual education and multicultural education? It was going to be me. And I didn't want to be stuck with one seminar course and everything else not what I was planning on doing.
Right.
So eventually I told them, I'm not going to be able to come. And they said, okay.
I mean, what time span was this? Was it like a year they were waiting on you, or?
I let them know. I don't remember if it was in the spring or even if it was earlier on that all of these cuts and things were happening. I'm guessing it was probably from July on, because that's usually when those things happen. But they had been willing to wait for the year, but I didn't take a year to tell them I'm not going to be able to come, and I didn't know what they were going to say. But they simply said, okay. Dodged a bullet there.
You probably were nervous about it, and like it dwelled for a little while. You're like, man, I'm really gonna have to like say no to this, and then they're just like, okay, it's fine.
So I stayed in Austin. I applied a couple other times and looked at other things, but not real seriously until it got to that point where I thought, it's time for me to leave. It's time for me to go back to higher ed. So I ended up here. I'd applied to different places, but this was the planets aligned. My mom was starting to get more frail, and she lived 30 or 90 minutes, like an hour and a half away from Wichita. The person whose position vacated was a very good friend of mine for decades. So she let me know what all was going on over here. So I had an inside track for all of that. I was hired. The position was for social studies methods and supervision. That wasn't necessarily my background, but I had a curriculum instruction degree, and that could apply very easily to social studies area. So I came in, I got good vibes, and then I got a chance to I didn't get to meet the department chair because she was not here, but I did get a chance to sit down and have dinner with the dean of the college. And I knew I was going to take a pay cut. I didn't know exactly how much because I was central office. My salary had increased and increased while I was there. And so I knew I was going to get a pay cut. So I wasn't still real sure about all of this, but she said the magic words. And what she told me is she said, there are a number of holes in our college that you can fill, because part of the reason I stayed in Austin is because I had colleagues in similar roles for other areas that would utilize me because I wasn't just the gifted person. I wasn't couched because I never wanted to be couched as that person. Yeah. You know, where it's like, put me in a little box. So when she said that, I knew there would be possibilities here and I wouldn't be the elementary social studies person. Right. That came to be true to a degree because she also brought me in because of the work I had done in our district to try and set up some things for college readiness. She brought me in good timing here because they were having conversations relative to a Kansas Board of Regents focus on college readiness and connection of K-12 to higher education. So I was brought in as a consultant before I was even hired, officially hired, came to a meeting, got a chance to talk to people and all. They were like, oh, because I was doing things nobody else was doing. Nice. And so when I came on board, I was still involved in these meetings, and the person who's now our president, who at the time was an assistant vice president, he was kind of leading those conversations. And there was another faculty member that was. Well, as soon as I started with those meetings, next thing I know, I'm facilitating the meetings, then I'm calling the meetings, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, is this all about meetings? Because coming from a school district, I knew that school district think that higher ed sometimes just brings people together so they can check a box. We did that, it's done. So I told the assistant vice president at the time, who eventually became provost, who eventually became the president. So I have a direct link now to the president of our university.
So don't mess with you.
Yeah. Well, no, he's the best thing that could have happened with a lot of turnover here in a very long time. But I told him from the school district perspective that if all they did was had meetings, that the school district would write us off, that we weren't serious about anything, and we needed to do something more. Well, he took that to the dean, and the dean and the provost at the time, an interim provost, came up with a plan that would make me a 12-month person, which was a bonus for me because I was trying to figure out what am I going to do during the summer. I'm a 9-month contract. The other 1/4, 25% of my work would be college readiness. They did ask me, because they tried to figure out how to do it for research, for service and all, because I was tenure track when I started. And they said, we have this other kind of scenario, but that would take you off tenure track. I said, good. Because I never bought into the whole tenure track process, but it's mainly because I've been in places where it hasn't been a very, it hasn't been a very healthy experience. It more of the, what people say is bad about the tenure and promotion process. And I found that's not the way it is here. But I also wasn't starting a career. This was like round 3 or round 4. So I thought,
I was going to ask, how long have you been now at Wichita State?
This is my 11th year.
11 years.
I am doing 0 of what I started when I got here. I was doing that up until February of last year. It was 0 of what I had been hired to do. Now I'm 50% doing, 75% doing and more of what I wasn't doing last year differently.
Okay, well, for those keeping tabs, Delia, I know you're taking notes. We've gone from kindergarten teacher, right? Science middle school. I haven't even been able to keep track. And tell us what you do at Wichita State, because there are more than, even this week, you all, full transparency, I had to shift the graphic for with your title because there are quite a few and we couldn't get it right. So what is your role now? There are more than one.
Yes, so it went from primarily the elementary social studies, elementary person, and college readiness, because that happened within a year that I was doing 12 months. Then I did that for either 4 or 5 years. And then one of our interim department chairs, and I'm in 11 years, I think I'm number 8 department chair. We've had some issues, but the person at the time, there was a year when we had somebody who was on our state board that our dean knew, and she asked her to come and be interim chair, who, when I was at middle school, was my assistant principal there, not as a student, when I was teaching there. she came in and I thought, is she even going to remember me? Not only did she remember me, she remembered that I started my doctorate while I was there and that I went to Northern Arizona University. She knew, she was great. Well, as we were getting toward the end of the fall, she calls me in and asks me a question. And she said, would you be interested in being the director of the Transition to Teaching program? Now, I was all traditional elementary. This was an alternative route for career changers at the secondary level. Caught me completely off guard, but she recognized my leadership potential.
Well, did you already tell them, had you told them about the 27 credit hours and all of that in college? Because they're probably like, Dr. Granada can handle it. Dr. Granada can handle it. He did.
No, they didn't have that as a reference point, nor the fact that I played the blue caterpillar in Wichita Children's Theater, Alice in Wonderland. I shared that with my freshman seminar students, and then they went hunting for the picture. And I said, you're not going to find anything because there are no pictures. But so she asked me that, and my response was, that's an interesting thing. You know, I'll think about it. My mind immediately kicked into that day how I could make it better.
Yeah.
The little that I knew about it. That's all I needed to know, that it was time for me to do that. Yeah. So I took that by the horns because the person that had been running it retired, but retired at a point in time where there were two people, a part-time instructor and our licensure person that were trying to hold it together, and they needed some leadership. So I came in. I have a saint for the restricted licensure specialist because she's hung in there with me. She's been here for like 25 years, and she's been in this role for almost 20, I think, or 16, 17 years in her role. So she's been with the program 3 times as long as I have, and she doesn't like change. And here I come as a change agent, and everything has worked out really well.
Nice.
Until the next change that came about. I was very happy running Transition to Teaching. It was a little bit of a silo. I was building it. I was making it the best, maybe in the country, in terms of the way that we've designed things.
Love it.
And then we had a series of chairs that left. The last 2 chairs lasted from July to October. And the last one lasted from July to February. Now, the one that left in October left. The one that lasted till February stepped down to become a faculty member. And when we looked around the room, we also had a whole split of our department. We had a big department, and then a lot of those people moved over to the other department. And there were a lot of reasons for that happening, none of which really were logical, more dynamics and political kinds of stuff, as higher ed politics can become. So I looked around at my colleagues. Nobody wanted this thankless job. I looked around and I thought, I wasn't even on anybody's radar. No, I take that back. Maybe on 1 or 2 people's radar, but I thought, I can do this.
I love
that. I have the skill set. I have the history, because the 2 previous people were not from Wichita State. They came from outside of Kansas, and it was very hard for them to understand Wichita State, and that caused a lot of some of the challenges they ran into. I had the history. I studied. I have all the network and all. I knew I could do this job. What I didn't realize, well, I set myself up in part for this, is that not only was I going to now be first the interim, and the faculty had to decide, do we want him to stay? And yes, they did. So I ended up with a 3-year appointment as chair.
I love that.
And we'll see if I get through my first full year as chair.
Yeah, wait, July to where are we? November?
Yes, because it's now a month itch, the 4-month itch and the 7-month itch.
Wait,
But
it's become months now.
I knew I could do it because I knew what my skills were. I
Yeah.
had connections all across campus. I knew I would have the support of our administration. And so I stepped up to the plate, but I said, I will do this, but I also have to be director of transition to teaching because I'm not done with making that institutionalized. And I wasn't going to leave my colleague out there who was like, this was a change she was not prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also said, and I need to continue my college readiness work. What I didn't know is that some tables would turn, and I would also be in charge of our ESOL program, which was put on pause when our person retired, and now I'm bringing it back to life without a person, and I'm the only one with that background to be able to do that here. And our early childhood person went to the other department, but my department and my faculty said, oh, we have to keep that program. I knew that was bad news.
No one stepped up and everyone looks over at you.
I knew it was bad news and I knew it would come back to haunt me, but I was trying to establish a positive, unified role.
Yeah.
I even had the interim dean come in to say, you know, if you keep it, you're not going to get a person. Didn't matter to them. Well, no, because nobody was going to do anything with it. So I'm also in charge of our early childhood program. Of course, I'm the only one in our department with early childhood certification and any experience with that.
Dr. Granada, I mean, I don't know where to begin. I mean, so Dr. Gilbert Davila is with us. Hello, Dr. Davila. Good to see you. I mean, this is an amazing story. To be committed to children the way that you are, to be committed to our educational system, because that's what it's about, you know, and knowing that teachers and students would lose out if those programs dissolved, you know, that's
and
really
what makes my role so important is you hit it on the nail on the head.
Yeah.
All too often in higher ed, even in teacher education, sometimes it becomes about the faculty.
Yeah.
And because of my roots, all the way from my own schooling, it's always been about the kids, the students, the young people, and that's what my role is all about here. And it's not all, you know, there's some fixing to do. I try not to say fixing, because every once in a while I get into my time in Texas, had an impact on me, and I still say y'all a lot.
Yeah.
I know with a Southern accent. But there are some things that I need to fix here, including a way for my faculty to be even more student-centered than we already are. Because all of us have come from public education and public schools. So we are already in that mode. But higher education can change that mode. And we are a research institution, and we hear a lot about a lot of stuff that doesn't always sound like student-centered. It sounds like research-centered and money-centered and all. And so I have to keep reminding my faculty and institutionalizing or working on it that part of our branding is that we're all about the students.
Yeah.
There are places that have a lot of online kinds of stuff, and I will not be convinced that it's the same kind of experience as our traditional experience that is part of our branding here.
Yeah.
Same with my alternative certification program. All the other ones are all online. Somebody wants an online class, then they need to go to one of those, because that's not the kind of commitment that we want to produce the outstanding teachers in our alternative route that I want us to have. We have some really good alternative programming. We have some really good online programming, but our online programming has stemmed from people who know what it's like to be student-centered. So even our online programming, I think, is unique compared to other online programming that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'm gonna bring up Dr. Davila's next comment. Very inspiring. Student-centered. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't used that term yet, because it's the reason. I mean, it sounds like for your commitment. We talk about the number of credit hours and the number of years and all of that, and it all comes back to that, right? The fact that students deserve a quality, equitable education. And I am very humbled to have been able to now have several conversations with you, honestly, because your passion and your commitment radiates off of you, from the story of your journey and your story as an educator. I know everyone who's here with us this evening is inspired, just like me. I mean, like I said at the beginning, if it weren't for my life, our lives, we could talk forever. It's the same thing that happened, y'all, at our first meeting before our for our live stream. It was a 30-minute meeting. It was an hour and a half later. We were like, we should probably go do other things with today. Dr. Granada, I am so grateful for you, thankful for you, for spending time with us this evening. And I am so proud to know that you have people being in your community and in your realm. I may be needing to come get a degree at Webster University, not Webster, Wichita State. I know, don't.
whoa.
You know why I said that? Because my master's is from Webster, and so my mind went there. But I might need to come get a degree from Wichita State.
Is it? Oh.
I mean,
You need to come anyway,
no,
so that
yes,
we can start strategizing.
yes.
I call it strategizing. Others say plotting, but I call it strategizing because
Our
it's a
founder
better
calls
word.
it ideating.
I like that too. Now, I did want to just say one
Yes,
last little
please.
thing. It's a
Of
side
course.
thing.
Of course.
So I wasn't sure, and I didn't search enough for it to know whether there was going, because when you asked for the graphic, I didn't know whether this was more like a podcast and all,
Yeah.
because I never experienced one of these things. So I kept thinking, what do I wear just in case?
Yeah.
So I'm giving a shout out to the 2003 Grammys because I was there.
Oh, wow.
I wore my Grammy shirt. I don't wear it very often.
Can I see the whole what?
If you see all the way to the bottom, it'll
I
say the
love that.
2003 Grammys.
That is really cool. Delia, I'm with you. How many lives have you lived, Dr. Granada? Because
yeah, there's a whole other side of me about going to China, going to Japan, going to Spain, all of the. I have led a very rich life.
I love that. I love that. And I can probably speak for all of our listeners that we wouldn't be mad to have a part 2 and part 3 and a whole series on Dr. Granada and your.
You are so engaging, Susana, that
oh my gosh.
If you want to do this, I will carve in the time to do
what?
this, even a whole series, because I can put it on my resume and be even more marketable. Did I mention I'm an opportunist?
That's really what this is, right? It's not go with the flow. It's not all of no. Dr. Granada, thank you so much for being with us this evening. I will for sure 2022. I'm coming up Wichita State, LEC community. I hope you enjoyed our interview, Dr. Granada. Thank you for the work that you do, the commitment to our students and to teachers. And we'll talk soon. We'll stay in touch.
Well, I hope maybe the next focus can be how do we get more Latinos into the profession?
Absolutely. It is our mission and it is important to us. I think that's a great idea. Having a special edition. Why are there not more Latinos in education? You and I know why, right? And so it'd be great to share that and your thoughts and the numbers and all the things.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. And whoever's out there listening, watching, whatever the case is, good for you that that you have this kind of interest. Good for you that you are helping whoever it is in the role that you are. And since I'm guessing it's going to be a lot of educators out there, good for you for going into this noble profession.
Yes.
Higher ed K-12, wherever you at, because we don't get enough props for what we do. Although we're getting a little more of them because of COVID.
Yeah. The parents in the community saw what it takes to to get kiddos to learn. Dr. Granada, thanks for those words, because it's very much the way that we feel. Listeners, thank you for all that you do. And Dr. Granada, I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.